Recording. We're recording out here. I wanted to see something real quick. But we're going to do a little reaction today. I want to see if this is working. We're going to do it.
We're edging towards World War. And over the past few hours, some major news on that front.
Tell you
we
true,
now have confirmation that
I think this is working.
the United States of America has been lying to us about U.S. forces in Ukraine. We have the U.S. stockpiling drugs to fight radiation sickness in case of a nuclear fallout. Or nuclear explosions, so they're buying up all of the radiation drugs. Russia launched a massive military operation, and we knew that this was going to come sooner or later, right?
You hear this?
The military was going to launch a devastating attack on Ukrainian forces, and they did just that. We have a small update, at least, on some of the major military operations, which is a major attack on Kherson. The Russian military attacked in all directions. It pushed the armed forces.
I can't believe this is really going on in the world, man. This is wild, bro. This is wild. But I think this is the microphone. So normally I got a headphone attached to this. But I'm pretty sure this is the microphone spot. So we're going to find out. Because it's saying my microphone's still plugged in.
Of Ukraine from the line of defense. This was reported by the journalists and to the Ministry of Defense. According to the agency, the Russian military managed to destroy more than 100 Ukrainian servicemen, as well as 6 tanks, 8 armored combat vehicles, and 9 vehicles. The ministry also reported on strikes in the points of temporary deployment of the 35th Marine Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the Kherson region. In addition, so this is the big piece I wanted to point out, is now the aerospace forces of Russia pounding targets in a way that we haven't seen before. So the Russian aerospace forces dealt high precision blows to the points of deployment of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Nikolaev area. Also, Der Spiegel, which is up there on your screen, that's a German newspaper. Ukraine's forces are being devastated, and these little offensive movements are being met with crushing defeats. That's why today, according to Der Spiegel, the German newspaper, the European Union is set to train 15,000 new Ukrainian soldiers. The European Union, according to Der Spiegel, is training 15,000 new Ukrainian soldiers. Well, a lot of it was happening in Germany.
I want to thank y'all, all y'all, for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And I'm glad y'all rocking with me. I'm glad y'all here. I'm glad y'all chilling. I'm glad y'all chilling with the vibes. I'm glad y'all relaxing, watching videos, living your whole life. And I thank everybody who comes on here, who watches my videos, who comments, who subscribes, whatever you're doing, even if you're just watching, it don't matter to me, because you know this is for my benefit, you know, because I feel like just alone creating helps me in itself, because it makes me think more and more about creating, about creation, about what can I create, what can I do, can I tweak this a little bit, can I make this, can I do this, can I do that. So, you know, this is all for, as much as it's for me, it's for everybody else also. You know what I'm saying? As much as it's for me and mine's, it's for y'all's too. You know, I hope I inspire somebody else out there to start doing this, because I just started doing this 6 months ago, and I never thought I'd be this far into it, that I would figure out everything. I figured out how to do all this, make my own thumbnails, make my own videos, make my own reaction videos. I learned how to do all that just from watching YouTube videos and figuring it all out myself. Figuring out how to do the mic, figuring out how to make it work, how the sound works, everything.
And it was happening in
But let's get into it. Let's break this down. Let's do this reaction. And this is Amplex, and this is talking about what's going on over in the world right now, in Russia. This is a few weeks ago.
Actually. We also know at Ramstein Air Force Base. So a lot of the training was happening there. It was also happening in Kent, in the UK. And there was also training in Denmark. So there's been training in multiple locations throughout the European Union. I think the big news, there's a whole bunch of big news today, but this major piece that happened just like shortly before we came on the air, is what Vladimir Zelensky just issued a statement, basically saying NATO needs to strike preemptively now inside of Russia. I mean, now the cat's out of the bag. It's not us. NATO needs to attack Russia inside Russia. And oh, by the way, yes, go ahead and use nuclear weapons. This is Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. Watch.
Що повинна робити НАТО? Унеможливлювати застосування Росією ядерної зброї. Але, що важливо, я ще раз звертаюсь до міжнародної спільноти. Як це було до 24-го? Превентивні удари, щоб вони знали, що з ними буде.
I swear they be just putting this stuff out just to scare us and keep us in line, yo. For real. Because I've been reading this book, right? This is Alternate Realities. Lawrence LeSean. And he talks about how our belief is what constructs our reality. So it's not reality constructs us, right? So it's not our, like the world and the planets and everything. We think, oh, the world and the planets and everything constructs us, right? But that may not be the case. They're starting to find out more and more experiments we do on the brain starts to find out that our brains are actually constructing all this, are constructing our reality. So if that's the case, is there a way to use our belief system to our advantage? You know, if you start believing every day, I'm going to be a millionaire, are you going to become a billionaire? You know, so, and it's kind of weird because it kind of makes sense, right? So our eyesight, right? Lights go into the eyes, and then it goes into our brain, and our brain computes it, and it tells us what we're seeing. So our brain is telling us what we're seeing. So now, if it's telling us what we're seeing, it's telling us our whole construct of reality, our hearing. So our brains are really reality. In a sense, right? So it almost makes sense. This theory almost, it does. With quantum mechanics and everything, they're starting to figure this out.
Якщо вони застосують, а не навпаки, чекати ядерних ударів Росії, щоб...
Hey friends, today I'm
Little
so
ad,
thrilled because a week
you
ago
know,
I
gotta
applied
deal
to
with
this
'em.
reward.
ядерних ударів Росію, щоб потім...
But I was also going to say that the placebo effect too, that's a very interesting thing right there, you know, like the same thing, how 85% of people thinking they were taking a drug and it was nothing, and they got healed because their body thought it was a drug. You know, it's just weird how our brain operates, you know.
Казати, ах ти так, ну ось тримай від нас. Переглянути застосування свого тиску. Ось я вважаю, що повинна робити НАТО. Переглянути порядок застосування.
But here's another take on this, which is this news piece. NATO must make it impossible for Russia to use nuclear weapons, according to Zelensky. President Zelensky believes that NATO should make it impossible for Russia to use nuclear weapons. Preemptive strikes are needed so that they know what awaits them if they use nuclear weapons. So preemptive strikes are needed. So we need to attack inside Russia using NATO forces. The Kremlin responded a short time ago. Vladimir Putin's spokesman slamming Ukrainian president, demanding for preventative strikes on Russia. The Kremlin has accused Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky of trying to spark a third world war after he demanded that NATO carry out preemptive strikes on Russia to deter the use of nuclear weapons. Zelensky stated that NATO must ensure Moscow does not use nukes against Kyiv forces. To do this, he called the U.S.-led military bloc and international community carried out preemptive strikes against Russia so that it knows what to expect. The Biden administration thinks that nuclear war is coming in the United States. They just bought up all of the anti-radiation drugs for use in a nuclear emergency.
Wow.
This is from the Health and Human Services. They just printed this on their website.
Wow.
The Health and Human Services
come on,
purchases
man.
drugs for use in radiological
The
and nuclear
signs
emergencies.
are right
They bought
there.
like 300 million rounds of it. So, yay, great. Now we've got that. So, as part of a long-standing, ongoing effort to better be prepared to save lives following radiological and nuclear emergencies, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is purchasing a supply of the drug Nplat from Amgen. That being said, we have a bombshell new report out today from The Intercept detailing how the United States has been using extensive deployment of U.S. troops inside Ukraine, and they are conducting unknown operations.
Unknown.
This is unbelievable. So let's read from the Intercept report here. Halfway through the article, they drop the bombshell that secret U.S. operations inside Ukraine are being conducted under a presidential covert action finding. Yet, yes, clandestine American operations inside Ukraine are now far more extensive than they were early in the war, when U.S. intelligence officials were fearful that Russia would steamroll over the Ukrainian army. There is a much larger presence of both CIA and U.S. Special Operations personnel resources in Ukraine than were at that time of the Russian invasion in February. Several current and former intelligence officials told The Intercept. It goes deeper than that. Secret U.S. operations inside Ukraine are being conducted under a presidential covert action finding, current and former officials said. Deeply troubling. Let's ask the president. Mr. President, as reporters attempted to do today in some part, Mr. President, do you have anything to say for yourself? You've been lying to us the whole time.
Stupid. Of course he ain't got nothing to say.
So, what is a presidential covert action finding? This is the technicality that he's authorized the use of U.S. military forces in Ukraine.
Basically,
so Michael Tracy explains this in a tweet this afternoon. He says, I wonder if we'll ever get to see a copy of Biden's presidential covert action finding authorizing secret U.S. military operations in Ukraine, or if there's another John Poindexter running around who's determined to make sure we never get to see it. Of course, what he's referring to there is John Poindexter, who worked under, was the National Security Advisor to Ronald Reagan. Who ripped it up when it was being used for the Iran-Contra, to Reagan's justification for sending arms to the Iranians in the Iran-Contra scandal.
This is how they start every war.
Excellent independent journalist Michael Tracy on the show to unpack this a little further. What was your response upon seeing this report?
Well, since the moment the war started, I've seen speculation to this effect that there was just assumed to be a presence of American Special Forces or American personnel of some kind that were on the ground in Ukraine. Now, we did know that there had been a public deployment of actually the Florida National Guard in Ukraine prior to the war. That was a long-term deployment for, quote-unquote training purposes. And what was claimed in February is that that unit or units of the Florida National Guard that had been deployed to Ukraine for training had been withdrawn in anticipation of the Russian invasion, because the idea was the U.S. did not want its forces to be in direct combat with Russia. Certainly Joe Biden repeatedly pledged really, that he would not deploy American forces to take part in direct combat against Russia, hence that withdrawal of the National Guard unit. But even aside from that, the internet was flush with speculation that, just kind of just assume in these sorts of situations that there would probably be some sort of covert or, stealth American military presence. Now, I had been looking for months to see if I could get any kind of hard verification of it, hard reporting of it. In April, there was a hard report in the Times, the newspaper in the UK, that...
See how they cover it up? You see how he could not find a report for the longer. You see that? He kept looking and looking and looking. That's crazy.
That a British Special Forces deployment was physically in Ukraine as of April. Now, what do you infer from that? Well, most of the time, the UK military does
tandem with the U.S. See?
What do you infer from that? Well, most of the time, the UK military does what it does in tandem with the U.S. military. It really operates as a subsidiary, much of the time, of the U.S. military. So you might expect that if there was this on-the-ground, boots-on-the-ground presence of the UK military, something might be happening likewise with the U.S., but there was no hard verification of that, really, as far as I could tell. You kind of just have to maybe surmise things or infer things. But then yesterday, for the first time that I'm aware of, The Intercept did report, and it's strange because they didn't actually emphasize this in the headline.
Right.
Which you'd think they would. They kind of buried it because they were emphasizing other aspects of the sort of intelligence that they had been made privy to on the, what the U.S. anticipated as to the efficacy of the Russian invasion. I would have personally probably emphasized this part, which is that there have been continuously since the onset of the war a special forces deployment to inside physically to Ukraine. Now, they don't specify what those special forces have been doing. They don't say whether they've been engaged in combat or not. They don't say really anything at all about what they've been up to.
Don't want us knowing what they're doing.
What would they be up to in a war zone? I don't know. You tell me. I mean, it's ridiculous that it took, 7-8 months for this information to come out in plain text when it was the case all along.
Let's talk about this presidential covert action finding. If anybody watching right now who's not a student of history might not be aware of what this phrase means and how it's been used in history, I was surprised to read this in this report also, that this is how President Biden was using this in order to justify putting boots on the ground inside Ukraine, the presidential covert action finding. What is this? How has it been used before? And what power does it give the presidency?
Well, it's a pretty obscure mechanism, as you might expect for a mechanism that's intended to be kept secret, to authorize secret operations.
Right.
I mean, this is a very obscure order, again, for a reason. That there's one of the most famous instances of an order like this being issued was by Ronald Reagan in December of 1985, when he issued one of these, findings to authorize the, what was then the technically illegal shipment of arms to Iran, as part of the what came to be later known as the Iran-Contra affair. And the document that Reagan signed authorizing this secretly was then later destroyed by his national security advisor, John Poindexter, who then got prosecuted criminally for that. There is an emerging consensus among, fairly reputable analysts, media outlets, even very hawkish media outlets, like, the Dispatch. They're all putting out articles and proclamations saying that the risk that the U.S. the U.S. and the world now faces for nuclear destruction is as high as it's been since the Cuban Missile Crisis 60 years ago. So we have that. And on top of that, we now have the first confirmation that there are boots on the ground in Ukraine. And the U.S. is not just operationally coordinating and subsidizing the war effort against the world's largest nuclear armed power. They're engaging in physical execution of it in the war zone itself, which had never been, at least to my knowledge, acknowledged so openly until this article came out yesterday. So that's a hugely combustible combination of events that you'd think would merit some, front page, so to say, coverage or commentary. Even just earlier this year, when suddenly this major Russian warship gets sunk, right?
Right.
And everybody's saying, rah, rah, look at the ingenuity of the Ukrainians. They're doing such an amazing job. We underestimated their tenacity. It's such a wonderful, inspiring story of, what a military force can do.
It was the U.S. the whole time.
Conditions. And then, the New York Times then eventually, afterwards, lets us all know that, oh, by the way, it was actually operationally coordinated by the U.S. This Russian flagship. So yeah, I mean that's the pattern. We don't get told anything of significance usually in real time. And we all just have to kind of read tea leaves until, you know, the New York Times can be bothered to tell us about the secrets whispered to them that are probably incomplete themselves from, you know, different intelligence. When the war started, I went to the border in Poland, and I went to, physically, the new military installations the U.S. had constructed in Yeshiv at this airport facility, where they were, this was the U.S., this is from where the U.S. was organizing the
fuck is that?
Of huge amounts of armament into a war zone. And it was all shut off from any kind of media scrutiny. I mean, you can't, to this day, to my knowledge, you can't, no journalist has actually examined any of this new military infrastructure that's been constructed. Now, I tried to, you know, catch glimpses of stuff here and there, or see trucks going in and out, or, you know, things being handed off. But it's a massive operation. I mean, and in fact, the U.S., they just announced at the NATO conference in June, which I also went to in Madrid, that the U.S. is going to be making a base permanent in Poland now.
Right.
What?
And so the idea that that was the end of it, or like our knowledge of
how do y'all feel about that?
Massive scale military.
How do y'all feel about that, people? A permanent U.S. base in Poland. Closer and closer.
Operation was complete. Was also always just preposterous, and yet, you know, that's not how the situation tends to be portrayed in the media. The media have this sort of like euphoric, you know, joy around, you know, supporting Ukraine or screaming Slava Ukraini or whatever, and that's basically the extent of their, you know, dispassionate analysis of the situation. What's the commonly understood to be the precipitating event of the Cuban Missile Crisis? It was Soviets wanting to bring Russia nuclear warheads into Cuba, right?
Right.
Right near the United States landmass.
Right.
Well, Poland's pretty close to Ukraine. It's on the border, actually.
This is the stage we're in right now. This is the elevation of tensions. I mean, we've got the United States actively, multiple reports now with U.S. forces actively there, and not just a small contingent, but actively in charge of the heavy weapons. This is, of course, as we had David Petraeus here, a total lie on the part of David Petraeus, telling us that, no, there's no active boots on the ground by the United States in Ukraine. Nothing at all. Nothing to see here. You know.
Yeah. It's really shocking, and it feels just like massive escalation right as we speak, but it's not. It has been all along.
That's insane. So there you have it, people. We over in the Ukraine, and we're getting busy, yo. And they're trying to lie to everybody and say we ain't getting busy. That's crazy. The world, you see how it keeps coming back to the same thing over and over and over, and it's like they're trying to keep everybody in check. That's what it almost feels like. It almost feels like they're all working together just to try and keep the people scared at home in check, not doing anything. So it's weird. It's a weird thing. It feels a little off to me. How it just keeps coming back to the same thing, and then it dies down again, then it comes back, and then it dies down again, and then it comes back. It's just a weird thing, man. It's a little funny to me. It's starting to seem a little comical, because how come there's never been any threat of a nuclear war? Really, nobody's ever pushed the button. The one time that happened, supposedly UFOs came down and turned on all the missiles. So, and what happened? We all freaked out because we didn't want it to happen. So now, mind you, you think anybody would really, really push that button? I don't. I really don't. It's like, who wants the whole fucking world to die? Who would really want that? I know I wouldn't. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Let me know your feelings on the whole situation, on what you think, what you feel. But I feel like there's something there that's preventing us from destroying ourselves. there's something out there preventing us from doing this. Something bigger than us. Something more smarter, something more intelligent. But like, comment, subscribe, share. Thank y'all. Love y'all. God bless. Me and Ferdinand, we out. 1.